Hello, everyone, and welcome to this NewsWhip webinar on how NewsWhip helps power Dotdash Meredith's social strategy. Thanks very much for coming along to this one. I am your host, Benedict, and I am the Director of Content at NewsWhip. And I'm thrilled to be joined today by Emma Glubiak, who is the Director of Social Strategy at Dotdash Meredith, and our in-house media expert, Sara Katritos. So I'm going to invite my esteemed panelists to do a little introduction for themselves because they can speak much better for themselves than I can for them. So Sara, why don't you just start by introducing yourself, telling people your expertise, what you're going to chat about today, and then Emma, I'll ask you to do the same.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Great to see you all. My name is Sara. I work over here at NewsWhip. I oversee our media clients. I'm working specifically with a lot of our newsrooms to move everyone over, not only from CrowdTangle, but just to get everyone set up for the next year with the election and all the big events. So I've been working pretty in depth with all of these clients. I've been working with Emma specifically over the past year or so. I'm going to be talking about just the media landscape in 2024, what this looks like, where we're going, and well, everything up and coming at NewsWhip.
Yeah, and a few tips and tricks from NewsWhip on how you can use the tool to help with all those things, I think, hopefully. And Emma, Director of Social Strategy at Dotdash Meredith. That's a big title. What does that entail from a day-to-day perspective?
Hi, yes. Thank you for having me to the NewsWhip team. Yes, so Dotdash Meredith covers 40 plus brands over a super wide range of topics, from food to entertainment to finance, pretty much any topic imaginable. My team does not sit on any one of those 40 brand teams. We're what we call a centralized team, which means we support our robust social and audience teams with their strategies, both strategy-wise and also with their operations, which means supporting them with their day-to-day workflows as they're working with our tools, vendors, and social platforms, which includes the lovely team at NewsWhip, and also supporting them with gathering data and working through any tech bugs that come up on the social platforms.
Okay, great. So an all-encompassing role, it seems, and basically anything social. It seems like you're responsible.
Exactly.
We'll get into the specifics of that in a little while, I think. I just want to talk a bit generally about the 2024 landscape. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on in 2024. Sara, you're working with a lot of our publisher partners on implementing solutions. What's that been looking like this year? And then Emma, I'll get your take on the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2024 has been a very busy year, as everyone can imagine, not only with CrowdTangle sunsetting in August, but also just with the social data that's available now. We're seeing Facebook becoming, I wouldn't say less relevant, but there's less out there. And it's even more important now for publishers and newsrooms specifically to have eyes on the broader social landscape. So being able to touch on every social channel and having a full view and a full picture of what media actually looks like beyond just what's being published on online news and beyond Facebook as well. We have been working with a lot of breaking news reporters, audience dev teams, social teams, like the team we work with Emma over here at Dotdash. But we are just finding this increasing need of people to understand, again, that broader holistic social landscape to inform not only your social strategy, but what to write about, what do people care about in not only the media, but also online social platforms. And it's just, we're seeing it to be really great to just advise newsrooms on generally what's going on. So 2024 has been busy. There's a lot of big events, the election, the Olympics, we have just a lot going on. So we're finding it way more important than ever to have a nice understanding of the media.
Yeah, I think that kind of tracks with what Emma was saying in her introduction. But Emma, are you is that kind of the thing you're seeing as well, like a real diversity of platforms, the need to monitor across different platforms? What does that look like from kind of a day-to-day perspective from you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sara used the word holistic a lot of times. I think that is a very good word for how we approach our social strategy. So we're constantly balancing two things here at Dotdash Meredith. We're always wanting traffic to our websites. Of course, we are a media company. We want people to read the wonderful content that our newsrooms and our editors are putting out there. But we also recognize that in 2024, a lot of the social platforms, Facebook included, are moving away from kind of prioritizing those traffic driving pieces of content. They want people to stay on their platforms. So we're kind of constantly balancing that traffic goal with also wanting to engage our audiences on platform on social. And a big part of that for us is understanding what our audiences are engaging with, understanding what our competitors' audiences are engaging with, even what folks are engaging with in terms of creators in our spaces, since we understand we're not necessarily just competing with other publishers now on social today. So I think in 2024, it's that constant kind of walking the line between wanting people to click out to our sites, but also wanting to meet our audiences where they are on social.
And do you view that as kind of almost a brand building exercise? That's how that's perceived internally?
Yeah, brand building. We also have a really big focus on video as a way to engage audiences. So social video is a big area of growth for all of our brands and verticals right now as well.
Okay, that's really interesting. And the metrics themselves, when you're thinking about your planning, your reporting, obviously you're talking about where your audience is, meeting them where they are and how they engage with you. How do those metrics come into your planning and reporting? And do you have, I guess, a measure for what success looks like? Because are there particular metrics that you're looking at? Do some have more value than others? Whatever you can share on that would be, I think, really useful for people that are in this role and thinking about how they want to approach these challenges.
Yeah, I think our two biggest value metrics are again, traffic. So sessions to our site is something we're always looking at every month. We're kind of iterating on what we saw get traffic from our social platforms. But then in terms of engagement, we do consider video views to be a form of engagement. So I would say sessions and video views are our two biggest metrics that we're tracking constantly. And when we're thinking of content strategy, we are thinking of content strategy in order to build on those two metrics on platform.
Gotcha. And then do you have, I presume you like set up benchmarks and say, okay, this is our, June average performance. These are the ones that did above that. Let's do more of that type of content. Do you feed into the content strategy as well when you're looking at these metrics?
Yes, so we do have benchmarks, of course, and goals that our teams are working towards. I would say I'm not sure I entirely understand sorry, if you could clarify the question there.
No, sorry, yeah, my fault for phrasing. I think, you see a certain type of content perform well. Can you then say to the editorial team, that worked, can we do more of it? Or are they siloed completely?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So my team is, as I said, centralized, but we are working very closely with our editorial teams every single day. And that is the kind of work that my team does. We also work very closely with the editorial teams who are in our tools like NewsWhip every single day. So it's not just my team that is monitoring content or monitoring our competitors, which I know we will speak more to very soon in NewsWhip. We also have trained our newsrooms and our audience teams on how to effectively use our tools themselves to do that kind of content strategy.
Great. And sorry, probably just worthwhile. Dotdash Meredith is a huge group. It may be just worth speaking the names of some of the brands that are part of that group in case people aren't aware.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Our biggest brand is People Magazine. So that is in the entertainment space. But as I said, we also cover pretty much every topic imaginable. So All Recipes is also one of our larger brands in the food space. We cover travel with Travel and Leisure, finance with Investopedia, InStyle covers fashion and beauty. And then we also have a very wide slate of brands in the home and lifestyle space with Better Homes and Gardens, Real Simple, etc.
Great. It's really so everything under the sun, and you need to understand every topic under the sun as a result of that. I think maybe in a minute we'll go into the tool and kind of trying to illustrate what you're talking about. But Emma, if you could just speak a little before we do so about how NewsWhip fits into the work that your team does, and if you have the context to provide it, the work that other teams do, how they use NewsWhip as well. And then maybe we'll go into the tool, and then we'll maybe come back for a bit more of a chat afterwards. But yeah, if you could talk a little about how NewsWhip fits into the work you're doing, that would be really helpful.
Absolutely. So our teams use NewsWhip in two main ways. The first is to monitor our competitors, which I know we touched on a little bit in some of our previous answers, but we are every single day. And when I say we, I mean me, but also our brand level teams, especially for our larger brands like People in Style, Entertainment Weekly, are in the NewsWhip tool every day, monitoring what their competitors are doing on their sites, but also off platform. So there's kind of two goals with that. One, we want to make sure that there's no gaps in our coverage. Of course, for any news that breaks, we want to be the first to cover it, but we also want to keep an eye on things to ensure that our competitors are not covering content areas that we are missing. And then two, just for benchmarking and getting a read on how things are going for our competitors. So I know a lot of publishers experienced a drop-off in performance on Facebook last summer, just around this time last year. And when that happened on our brands, we did turn to NewsWhip to kind of look at how engagements were looking for other brands to see, is this happening to just us, or is this happening across the board? And that's kind of a large example of that, but we are doing that much more regularly just to get a pulse on how things are going off platform for our competitors. And then our newsrooms and also our audience teams use NewsWhip also for tracking trending topics, because again, we don't just want to be looking at what our competitors are covering. We want to try and get to cover things quickly and first. So that looks like, I guess there's two ways that we approach that. If we know a big event is coming up, like the Super Bowl is always a really huge moment for People magazine. I think last year we saw they were the biggest domain coming from Facebook for the Super Bowl, which is amazing. And so we'll set up dashboards to track those moments, the Met Gala, the Super Bowl, any awards shows, to ensure we're not missing anything there. But we also set tracking for specific keywords, or if there's specific public figures that we know our audiences respond to. We want to know anytime they're posting on social, so we'll set alerts there, and we set those alerts also via Slack so that the wider team can have visibility into those without necessarily needing to understand the NewsWhip platform.
Okay, great. So there's kind of delivery of alerts and distribution of insights is a big part of what you're doing, as well as the
Yes,
kind of
absolutely.
competitive benchmarking and editorial use case. Maybe it's useful, Sarah, if we just jump into the platform and add a little color to what Emma's talking about. So could you show us a competitive dashboard? I know you have one kind of ready to go. And then Emma, as Sarah's doing this, feel free to jump in and like say, the kind of thing you're looking for in this kind of dashboard, or anything Sarah doesn't mention, please feel free to just jump in.
Really quickly, we do have two questions for Emma. Do you want to do that now, or would you want to?
Let's do it at the end. Let's do the platform first.
Okay, great.
But keep the questions coming in, definitely.
Alrighty. All right, so shall we start with competitor dashboard?
Yep, that'd be great.
Okay.
So what is this showing us, Sarah?
Can you see you can see my screen?
I can see it, yeah.
What is this showing us? Well, it's showing us a lot. I always say that I can spend like 2 hours telling people about this platform. There's a lot that you can gather from this. But I would say the number one thing is just understanding what the public cares about at any given moment, and how that kind of relates to not only you, but also your competitors. So just to give a little background for those of you who are unfamiliar with some of these metrics, or really how the tool works down to the core, you're able to create searches based on a couple of different things. Really high level, it's mostly Boolean logic, but you're also able to filter down our massive global source base to something really specific depending on what you want to look for. So it could be a handful of industry specific publications. It could be your competitors and all their social profiles. It could be specific Twitter accounts of local politicians. I mean, I could go on and on, but you're able to get very, very customized and specific with how you want to do your searching. You can also pair those together. So I think Emma just mentioned earlier, but she wants to see if a big moment, let's say, is being talked about amongst their competitors more so than themselves. This is a great way to do that just by pairing together a keyword alongside a custom source base. You can also do some additional filtering like language, where the outlet's publishing from, and category as well. But in this case, I just have USA Today, Forbes, and Business Insider as 3 examples. I have all of their social sources populated here with no keywords. So this is just going to be a feed of everything that USA Today has been putting out in the past 24 hours across all of their platforms.
And sorry,
So,
just before you move on, Emma, when you're looking at this kind of stuff, are you normally looking at a 24-hour view, a week-long view? What's your normal approach there?
Both. If we're just looking for quick insights, we'll look at the 24-hour view, but our teams also do monthly reporting where they might be looking at a longer tail view, just to compare maybe how our competitors covered a topic versus us in that last month, and relay any learnings to the wider team.
great.
Great, thanks. Sorry to interrupt you, Sarah. Go ahead.
Oh, please. Yeah, the 24 hours is really where we're getting our most accurate prediction data. And it's also going to be constantly updating for you in real time. So you'll be able to see a situation as it kind of starts to evolve or lives and dies. So the first thing we're looking at is public interest here. So public interest is going to be the accumulation of the social engagement on the online news articles that were published across your search. So let's say USA Today puts out an article, someone sees the news article, they copy and paste the link, they put it to their social profile, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, and then that post is engaged with. We're going to be monitoring those likes, shares, and comments on Facebook and retweets and likes on Twitter or X, putting those 2 together and showing you basically an engagement trend. So when you see a big peak in engagement, that's going to be attention being shifted towards one news article or multiple news articles. Then with media interest, that will be volume of articles published in a day, an hour, whatever time range it is. Really nice to understand what the volume is and how it compares to what people actually care about. When we look at a live issue, this is also going to be really important, which I'll get into in a moment. But essentially, when we're looking at a competitor search, we can layer up to 5 competitors together at one time. So right here, we're looking at how the public is paying attention to these 3 news article or news outlets and how they relate to each other. So if there was a really big spike between 7 and 8 p.m. on yesterday, June 25th, we can click into that and understand maybe what had been driving that interest during that period of time. So if I'm someone like Emma, or if I'm working at any of these publications and I want to analyze what's going on in my competitive landscape, this is going to tell that story for you really clearly.
And that's actually an interesting question, I think, for Emma, is what happens when you see a competitor has a story that's doing really well? What's the process internally? Is that then, we need to write about this, or is it, it's too late to write about this? They've already captured the market share here. What's the approach from your end?
It depends. We would probably flag it to whatever the respective team is. If it is a breaking news moment that for some reason we've missed, which we're rarely missing big news moments. But if that is the case, then maybe we would skip covering it, but it's always a conversation. And I will say a lot of our lifestyle brands are more evergreen, so what their competitors are covering might not be as timely, and we can put our brand's spin on whatever the content area is.
Okay, and do you use it to then say, okay, this is how they're promoting that article on social, ours maybe isn't doing as well, do we need to rethink the framing, how it's being promoted, that kind of thing as well?
Exactly, yeah. Like if we see a brand posted something actually as a photo post on Facebook and it's doing way better than our link post, we might take some learning from that.
Great.
Absolutely.
Cool. Can you talk us through the rest of the widget, Sarah, before we move on to the live event version of this?
Yes, absolutely. I will go through prediction a little bit more in depth when we get into the live event, but essentially what I was talking about earlier with this holistic view, this is quite literally a holistic view of what is going on across all of USA Today, all of their platforms, what's working, what's not working, what's trending, what's not trending. It's displayed really clearly for you. So you can essentially look at all of the articles that were put out, sort it in a variety of ways, whether it's the total interactions across platforms, what's overperforming across platforms, what was published most recently, what is traveling at the highest speed, which is a metric unique to NewsWhip that we call velocity, to essentially measure the speed in which news stories are traveling across social. Prediction, again, which I'll get into in just a moment, but you can go and sort all of these, all the articles by what is the top performing content. Same thing on Facebook. Emma, you just mentioned, is a link post performing better than a photo post? What does that look like? That is perfect for all of our CrowdTangle users. We're able to segment that out in the same way. So you can just do that right in the platform. And again, sort all of the content by reactions. We also have prediction within Facebook content, velocity, overperforming. We'll look at Twitter in the same way. What are the trends and engagements across every individual tweet? So I'd say that's the overarching theme with this, is no matter which platform we're looking at, the idea is to tell you what piece of content, what post, what one article is maybe trending and or not so much.
But we can also look on an aggregate level, can't we, Sarah? Where if we go to create a report, we can show all these kind of alongside each other at the account level as well. So if you look at the interest overview on social posts at the top there above USA Today, you can see who's performing the best across the last 24 hours for each of these. So it's a real snapshot view. I don't know, Emma, if you use something like this as well. But it's a nice, I don't know if you're sending reports like these. Do you use aggregate level reporting as well?
We don't use that as often as just the dashboard view, but
Gotcha. Okay, but this is a nice aggregated view of all the stuff as well. So sometimes people want individual posts, sometimes they want an aggregate level view, and you can do both with this.
Absolutely.
Cool. Anything else you wanted to add? Just a little conscious of time. So anything else you wanted to add, either of you, on competitive benchmarking?
I would say that's pretty much it. Maybe the one other thing is I have a lot of people asking me, like, I want to look at all of the Instagram posts between me and all of my competitors, and I want to see which piece of content is performing better. You would be able to do these searches where you're looking at all your competitors in the same dashboard, and that can answer that question for you. So in that case, you would have you and whoever else you want to look at in the same search, in the same Boolean search using the OR operator. Then you'll have all of the accounts listed out and then can sort it by whatever is most interacted with. And that will kind of give you almost like a leaderboard view of the social posts and what's successful.
And I think what's fascinating about this, also just to touch on your point, each of the top posts is completely different. It's not the same across Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok anymore. It's very, very different. Is that something you see with your brands as well, Emma? It's not a one platform fits all strategy or one post fits all platform strategy. Is it really, really diverse at this time?
yes, absolutely. Yeah, we are constantly adjusting or repackaging content depending on what we know the audience on that specific platform is looking for. And it's also very different across brands what that looks like. Like I said, some of our brands are covering very evergreen content, so that looks very different than how a brand might approach packaging content across platforms if they're covering more news and breaking content.
Great. Thank you. Right, let's have a look at a theme or an event rather. Let's look at Euro 2024, I think, which is the big ongoing soccer tournament in Germany at the moment. So this is just a very simple search.
Very simple. Yep, we're just looking at Euro 2024 or Euro 24. Again, we can get really granular with that searching if we want to, but in this case, I think captures it pretty well. Again, we're looking at the trend in public interest here. So there was a really clear peak yesterday. If something happened, it looks like something had been published over 30 times. So that could have contributed to it. And there were also 3 very distinct peaks in media interest within the past couple days. So that's one thing to note. But here I really wanted to go through prediction and talk a little bit about that. We spoke a bit about how teams are using that to inform their strategy, but just in a nutshell, how this is really working at NewsWhip is we're benchmarking the speed in the social engagements and that rate of change, and how that compares to the volume in which it's been shared up until this point. So by benchmarking those 2 metrics together, we get a pretty nice idea of where that story is likely going to land, based on, again, the rate of change and then the volume within the coming hours or days. So you're able to look at maybe a broad topic or something that's trending. And the biggest question I get from publishers, how can I get like one step ahead of the media cycle? Like, I just want to be a little bit ahead of it. I don't want to find out about a news story after it's viral and after all of my competitors have written about it. So prediction is a really nice way to kind of leverage the tool, to make the most out of the predictive analytics. So
And are you using those predictive alerts with your Slack as well? Is it the predictive alerts that you're using? Okay, great. That's great to hear.
yeah. So once you go and you can kind of piece out what's predicted to have the most engagement for the day, or the specific period in this case, you're able to go and set up alerts. So I know Emma's team uses this quite a lot, so we'll turn to her in just a moment. But there's a couple different ways we can do alerts in the tool, across a couple different networks. So you can choose which network that you'd like. You can choose a digest, which is an email digest that comes to your email however frequently you'd like it to arrive. We have AI generated insights that are just recently added into the tool that pretty much breaks down and analyzes all of the coverage from that time period and gives you trending themes and summaries that you can take away from it. But where I think that the alerts are most impressive are the custom threshold alerts, where you can set them up once NewsWhip predicts that a specific article within whatever topic it is predicted to reach a certain level of engagement. So this is great for competitive analysis. If you only care about your competitor's coverage once it reaches a certain level of engagement, or once it's predicted to reach a certain level of engagement, that's when you know it's time to do something about it. Same idea with a trending topic. And Emma, I'm sure you have quite a lot to say about this, but setting these custom thresholds to be able to receive the alerts and be a bit more passive about the work you're doing, but staying up to date at the same time.
Yeah, it'd be great to hear from you, Emma. I know we've talked about it a bit already, but kind of what happens when one of those alerts hits the Slack channel? You know, what's then the process of deciding what to do? What are you looking for? You know, is it just an awareness thing, or is it we need to act thing? What's the approach?
Yeah, so right now we're actually still figuring that out a little bit for a majority of our brands, because we are onboarding a lot more brands to NewsWhip this summer with the depreciation of CrowdTangle, and I think this alerts use case is that's the main way our brands are currently using CrowdTangle, and so this is going to be the main use case for NewsWhip for a lot of our lifestyle brands. But for our brands that do cover news, who already have these alerts in their workflows, it's always a conversation. My team can't be looking at every Slack channel for all 40 brands all the time and making recommendations. So we have a variety of teams who are in those channels, from the news teams who would be the ones covering it. We have a growth team who's our team that is in charge of our strategy for Google, and then the wider brand team. And so it's kind of all of those teams coming together in these alerts Slack channels to decide, hey, should we cover this? And we have topic level Slack channels. So you know, if there's a sports editor, their channel would just be feeding them sports content. They're not going to be in the food channel. So it does depend on the brand, but it is mostly an editorial conversation of when we should jump on content.
Gotcha. So it's an awareness driver, it's a conversation starter, and then it kind of rolls out from there.
Exactly, yes.
Great. Cool. That's fascinating. And a perfect use case. That's exactly what we want to see people doing with these alerts. So it's great. It's great to hear that.
Yeah. And just to quickly touch on just one, I'd say CrowdTangle feature is just this alerts portion on Facebook. So being alerted to when a post has reached a certain amount of any type of interaction, that's all available for you within the alerts.
Great.
And then I'd say the only other main things here are probably the top people and brands, top authors, top websites. We do have some of these overarching leaderboards or different kinds of insights that you can take from a big trending topic. So if you want to know who should my competitors really be within a larger area, or like an overarching topic, or even just who should I be focusing on and have my eyes out for, that will tell you pretty clearly here. And then with the top people and brands, we have just recently launched a interest quadrant, which I love to touch on for publishers and media orgs. I'll go really quickly through this, but it's just a different way to look at the analytics I was showing you earlier with public interest and media interest. And it gives you a really clear vision of what are my areas of opportunity within what is being written about in the landscape. So you have the volume of articles from low to high, the lowest amount to the highest, and then the interactions from the lowest amount to the highest here. And it's going to be ranked anywhere on the interest quadrant, just dependent on how engaged with it is and how many times it's being written about. So in the top left here is going to be, we call it areas of white space. So this is topics, people, or brands that are not being written about a lot in terms of volume, but have a very high amount of interest. So it's telling our publisher clients, like, maybe this is something that is relevant to your audience and not that many people are writing about it, or you might not have been focusing on it as much as you should be. Whereas on this side, everyone's writing about it and everyone cares about it. Here we have very low interactions, but high article count. So maybe everyone's writing about it, but doesn't get as much interest as maybe you would have thought. And obviously on the bottom left, we'll have low interest and low article count, which are typically things to kind of stray away from. But yeah, this feature is amazing. Again, this is another one I can spend hours talking about. Emma, I don't know if you've done any work in this. It's fairly new in the tool, but it's a good one.
I haven't. I'm excited. This is very exciting though, so we will be working it soon.
Perfect. That sounds good. Well, maybe we'll have another webinar when you've done a bit more work with it, and you can tell us all about how it's been a great success, hopefully. But yeah, it is, Sarah, to your point, it is great for kind of identifying where there's a gap in the coverage and people are interested, but the media aren't really covering it as much. So that's very interesting thing, and kind of leads into my next question. I think we'll hop out the tool and go back to just the three of us now, if that's okay. In a year of global elections, Emma, how are you? Obviously, there's going to be a wall of political coverage. How are you breaking through that noise with your brands that obviously aren't as politically focused? What's the social strategy that helps you get there without revealing the secret sauce? Obviously, no pressure to do that. But how are you approaching getting around that wall of noise that is an election year?
Yeah, we don't think of our brands as necessarily competing with political content, because I think our audiences come especially to our lifestyle brands for that kind of service-oriented content in whatever the area is that the brand covers. So we don't necessarily think of it as needing to break through a wall, but we do constantly want to be building on what we know our audience is responding to. So I would say we are always looking at tools like NewsWhip. We're looking at our internal analytics to build on what our audience is engaging with, what our audience is clicking on across our content. I'll also say Facebook just released their latest transparency ranking, which is where they rank the top domains and content getting traffic from Facebook, and people was ranked number 4 in the world on there. And there was also just a very clear trend in that transparency ranking of the top content was all kind of in that celebrity entertainment space. So I think to me that also shows that on the platforms, people are looking for the kinds of content that we're publishing, and maybe that's even a reprieve from the political content, especially
Yeah.
this.
I was gonna say, yeah, maybe people are looking for a break for something
Mhm.
different, and that's where, you know, people and other titles like that come in. Yeah, we always see we do that kind of analysis internally as well, and we always see people doing particularly well, always in and around the top 5 or 10, which is great to see. I think that's probably around the end of where we need to be. There are a few questions which I want to keep a little space for, so we'll ask those, and then if any more come in, that's great. But if not, then I think we'll end there. Emma, a question for you first. Would you make use of the different NewsWhip metrics, like Sarah was talking about, velocity, overperforming? Do you use any of those, or is it more the interactions level data?
We do use the NewsWhip metrics in the NewsWhip platform when we're sorting content, and also when we're setting those alerts, especially the predictive analytics we find quite valuable. We're not necessarily, if we're doing a monthly report to a wider group of stakeholders, we're not necessarily reporting on those NewsWhip metrics just because they're a little less familiar to maybe other stakeholders, but we do certainly use them in the platform and when we're setting those alerts as a benchmark.
Okay, great, thank you. Another question that I think is more for us. Do ad agencies use this tool? Yes, we don't limit who uses the tool. Anyone can use this tool. So if you see a use case, then please get in touch. We'll be happy to set you up. And then there's another question about ROI for NewsWhip. I mean, we have stuff internally for that. We've seen that people save an average of 12 hours a week through internal studies we've done. And, you know, we've had other folks say that there's been a 4x ROI and you know, 300 days of work saved in a year because of using NewsWhip. So that's my answer. I think that hopefully speaks for itself, but yeah, that's the quickest way I can answer that. I don't think we have any more questions. We do have probably 2 more minutes. I might ask one more for you, Emma, and then we can wrap up. How does your strategy differ across the different publications? Does it all, I know you said you're a centralized team, but are you looking at different things for the different publications? Obviously, you'll have different benchmarks, but are there kind of different goals in mind? I know you said traffic and things like that are the main goal, but are there kind of different things you're looking at for each publication?
Yeah, I would say at a high level, I know I think I've said this many times throughout this, but it does hold true. Our high level strategy is to do more of what's working, do less of
Yep.
what's not working, which sounds
Great
very
strategy. I
straightforward.
love that strategy.
But at the brand level, to get a little more granular, it does depend on the kind of content the brand is covering. Like a home brand might see a lot more traffic from Pinterest than an entertainment brand. So we might focus a lot more energy and time strategizing for that platform. Whereas for an entertainment brand, we might spend a lot more time strategizing for Facebook or Twitter. So at the platform level, it varies. And then also a brand that does cover more evergreen content like Better Homes and Gardens. We know every winter the audience is going to want tips for winterizing their garden, but People or InStyle, every winter it's going to be completely different what we're covering depending on what's happening in the world and with the people that our audience cares about. So I think there's also kind of that different approach depending on if our brand does have a newsroom or if it's a more evergreen service-driven brand.
Okay, great. That's fascinating. I think there's been lots of really interesting stuff today. Thank you for sharing your perspective, Emma. It's been really useful, and thank you for taking us through the tool, Sarah, as always. It's nice to add a little illustration to the stuff Emma's talking about, and kind of see that live. So yeah, I think we'll wrap it there and give everyone their lunch times. if you're on the East Coast. So thank you so much, Emma. Thank you so much, Sarah. Fascinating conversation. This webinar will be available. There will be a recording. So please follow up with us if you'd like to see it. Follow up with Sarah, any questions. And if you have any questions for Emma, we can pass them along, Emma, if you wouldn't mind. And I'm sure you'd be happy to answer those as well. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. And we will see you on the next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Right.